My 7-year-old son broke our elderly neighbor's prized rosebush while chasing a soccer ball. The old man's fury was terrifying. I had no money to replace it, so the next morning I knocked on his door and offered to fix it myself. He watched me work all day with cold, suspicious eyes. That night he knocked on my door crying. But before we dive in, tell me, what's your favorite flower? Drop it in the comments below. And if you love stories about unexpected friendships, healing through kindness, and finding family in unlikely places, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now let me take you back to the day everything fell apart. The moving truck pulled away from our new rental house in Somerville, leaving behind a few boxes, each one a reminder of the life I'd lost. I stood on the small front porch watching my son Cooper chase a soccer ball across the overgrown lawn. I tried convincing myself that this new beginning might actually work. Just 3 months ago, I was Matthew Long, a successful landscape architect, co-founder of a thriving firm in Boston. I had a beautiful home, a stable career, and what I thought was a solid marriage. Now I was just Matt, unemployed, newly single, and trying to rebuild a life that had crumbled in the most painful way imaginable. My ex-wife Stella had been having an affair with Ethan Lewis, my business partner for 7 years. The day I discovered them together in our office, my world fell apart. The confrontation that followed was brutal. Stella had gone from defensive to cold in seconds. "I got pregnant at 20, Matt," she said. "I never got to live my life. I went straight from college to motherhood, and I'm done pretending that's what I wanted." Ethan was apologetic, but not enough. "It just happened, man, we didn't plan it." Within 2 weeks, our firm, Long and Lewis Designs, was finished. We couldn't even be in the same room. He bought out my share for far less than it was worth. But I was too broken to fight. The design community in Boston was small, and word spread fast. Clients took sides, most of them with Ethan since he was still in business. My reputation wasn't destroyed, but it was stained. Everywhere I went, people whispered. I left Boston not because I had to, but because I couldn't bear the pitying looks, the quiet gossip, and the painful reminder that my wife had chosen my best friend over me. The final blow came 2 weeks ago. Stella told me she and Ethan were moving to London. He'd landed a job with a big international firm, and she was going with him. "I'm not taking Cooper," she said over coffee, avoiding my eyes. "Ethan doesn't want kids around, and honestly, Matt, I need this. I need a chance to live the life I gave up when I got pregnant. Cooper will be better off with you, you're the better parent anyway." So here I was, in a rundown rental house I could barely afford, with full custody of my 7-year-old son, no job, and dwindling savings. The only good thing left in my life was Cooper himself. He was resilient, excited about his new room, his new school, calling the move an adventure. He didn't fully understand why his mother had left, but he accepted it with a kind of grace that broke my heart. "Excuse me." A sharp voice cut through my thoughts. I turned to see an elderly man standing at the edge of the yard. He was tall and thin, probably in his late 70s, with perfectly combed silver hair and clothes pressed crisp and neat. Everything about him screamed order and disapproval. "Hello," I said, walking over with my hand extended. "I'm Matt Long, we're your new neighbors." He looked at my hand like it might be contagious, but finally gave it a quick, reluctant shake. "Edwin Abernathy," he said, "I live next door." I followed his gesture and felt my stomach drop. While my rental looked neglected and tired, his property was pristine. A perfectly trimmed lawn, precise hedges, and flower beds that looked like something out of a magazine. Even in late October, they were bursting with color. Chrysanthemums, asters, and several varieties of roses still in bloom. This was the work of someone who loved the craft and knew exactly what they were doing. "Your garden is beautiful," I said sincerely. "Those roses, are they David Austin's?" He raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised. "Some of them, roses. I used to be a landscape architect in Boston," I said, gesturing vaguely at the mess of our yard. "Before, well, all this." "I see," he replied, his tone sharp but polite. The kind of man who noticed everything and approved of very little. "Well, Mr. Long, I hope you'll keep your property up to neighborhood standards." The last tenants let things go badly. I'll do my best, I said, though I had no idea how I'd afford lawn care, while still trying to find work. And keep your son away from my garden, he added, voice tightening. Children and gardens don't mix, too much running around, too careless. I felt a flash of defensiveness. Cooper's a good kid, he'll be careful. He gave a curt nod and walked back toward his immaculate house. Friendly guy, I muttered under my breath. Who was that? Cooper asked, jogging over with his soccer ball tucked under his arm. Our neighbor, Mr. Abernathy, I said. He seems particular about his garden, maybe play soccer in the backyard from now on. Okay, Dad, he said, looking at the rows of flowers next door with innocent curiosity. His flowers are really pretty, can we grow flowers like that? Maybe someday, Bud, I smiled. For now, let's focus on unpacking. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur, getting Cooper settled at his new school, sending out resumes and praying for a response. Every email I received started with "We appreciate your interest," and ended with some version of "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." 3 months without work had drained most of my savings. I wasn't desperate yet, but I was close. To make ends meet, I started taking small handyman jobs, mowing lawns, cleaning gutters, basic repairs. It was humbling, using 15 years of landscape design experience to pull weeds for $20 an hour. But pride didn't pay the bills, and Cooper needed stability. He was adjusting better than I'd hoped. He liked his teacher, had made a few friends, and mercifully hadn't asked too many questions about why his mom was living in London while we were here. That conversation would come eventually, but for now I was grateful for the silence. 2 weeks after we moved in, disaster struck. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I heard a crash, the sharp sound of breaking branches, followed by Cooper's panicked voice. Dad! I ran outside. Cooper stood frozen at the property line, his soccer ball at his feet, eyes wide with horror. Mr. Abernathy's rose garden, perfect and proud, had one gaping wound. A magnificent rose bush, its stems heavy with deep red blooms, was snapped cleanly near the base. I didn't mean to, Cooper was crying now. The ball went over the fence and I climbed over to get it, but I slipped and fell right on it. I'm sorry, Dad, I didn't mean to. Before I could comfort him, a door slammed open. Mr. Abernathy stormed out, his voice like a blade cutting through the air. What have you done? He rushed toward the broken rose, his face pale with fury. What have you done to Aline's rose? I stepped forward, placing a protective hand on Cooper's shoulder. Mr. Abernathy, I'm so sorry, it was an accident, we'll replace it. Replace it? He snapped. That's a Lady of Shalott rose. My wife propagated it herself from a single cutting 7 years ago. 7 years of pruning, feeding, protecting. His voice cracked. You can't replace 7 years of love. He looked down at the shattered stem and I saw his hands trembling. This wasn't just anger, this was grief. I'm sorry, Cooper whispered through tears. I'm really, really sorry. Just go, Mr. Abernathy said quietly. Both of you get off my property. I guided Cooper back home, his small hand gripping mine, his body shaking. Through the window, I watched as Mr. Abernathy knelt beside the rose, touching the broken stem with heartbreaking tenderness. It was clear this wasn't about a plant, something deeper was buried in that garden. That night, after I tucked Cooper into bed and promised him everything would be okay, I sat at my laptop. I typed Lady of Shalott rose into the search bar. David Austin hybrid, highly fragrant, known for its golden orange blooms and delicate petals. Hard to grow, expensive. A mature plant like Mr. Abernathy's would cost several $100s, money I didn't have. But maybe I had something better. Not money but skill. 15 years in landscape design had taught me a few things. If the roots were intact and the damage was clean, maybe, just maybe, the rose could be saved. It was a long shot, but it was all I had. The next morning, after dropping Cooper at school, I walked up to Mr. Abernathy's front door. He opened it slowly, eyes wary. Mr. Abernathy, I began, I can't afford to replace your rose, but I used to be a professional landscape architect. I've restored historical gardens and I know roses. If you'll let me, I'd like to try to save it. No charge, just let me try. He studied me for a long, silent moment. You really think you can fix it? I don't know, I admitted. The break's bad, but the roots are strong. If I use grafting compound, proper staking, and a few stress reduction techniques, there's a chance, maybe 50-50. And if you fail, he asked. Then I'll owe you a rosebush, I said, even if it takes me a year to pay for it. He looked past me toward the garden, where the wounded rose leaned against its splintered stem. You have professional credentials. I can show you my portfolio, references, even my ASLA membership. That won't be necessary, he said after a long pause. He stepped aside and opened the door wider. The tool shed's unlocked, use what you need, but I'll be watching. If you damage anything else, this ends immediately, and I'll call my lawyer. Understood, I said, thank you. I spent the rest of the morning at the garden center buying supplies I couldn't really afford, rooting hormone, grafting compound, stakes, soil amendments. Then I went to work. Mr. Abernathy kept his word about watching. I could feel his eyes through the window as I knelt in the dirt, hands steady, heart pounding. The damage was worse up close, the main stem snapped, smaller branches bruised, but it wasn't hopeless. Carefully, I cleaned the break, applied the grafting compound to seal the wound, and staked the stem for support. As I worked, something inside me came alive again. My old instincts, the ones dulled by heartbreak and humiliation, returned. I saw things I hadn't noticed before. The garden was beautiful, yes, but imperfect. A few beds needed better drainage, some plants were too close together. There were subtle ways to make it thrive. Without realizing it, I started fixing little things, improving the mulch around the roses, treating a few early signs of black spot, adjusting plants for better sunlight. Hours passed. The world disappeared. For the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about my failed marriage or lost career. It was just me, the earth, and the quiet rhythm of healing something broken. Around 3 o'clock, I was adding the final touches when I heard the creak of the back door. Mr. Abernathy was coming outside. He walked slowly through his garden, inspecting what I had done. His face revealed nothing. After a long silence, he finally said, "You did more than just fix the rose." "I'm sorry if I overstepped," I replied. "I just saw some things that could be improved and—" He raised a hand, stopping me. Kneeling beside the repaired rosebush, he examined my work closely. "This is good," he murmured. "Professional work, you knew what you were doing." "Thank you, sir." He stood, brushing dirt from his knees. "How long did you say you've been out of work?" 3 months. "And why? A man with these hands shouldn't be unemployed." I hesitated, then decided the truth was better than hiding. My business partner in Boston was having an affair with my wife. When I found out, everything collapsed, the business, the marriage, my reputation. I moved here to start over, but starting over has been harder than I thought. Abernathy nodded slowly, his eyes distant. "Scandal and shame, they follow us, don't they, even when we're the ones who were wronged?" "Yes, sir, they do." "I'll be watching that rose," he said quietly, turning toward his house. "If it survives, we'll talk again." It wasn't forgiveness, but it wasn't condemnation either. It was a chance. Over the next 2 weeks, I checked the rose every day from my side of the fence. It began to show signs of recovery, new leaves, cleanly sealed breaks. The plant was fighting for life. Mr. Abernathy was often in his garden, and though we didn't speak, we exchanged small nods. "Is the rose gonna live, Dad?" Cooper would ask. "I don't know, buddy, we'll just have to wait and see." 3 weeks after the accident, there was a knock at the door after dinner. When I opened it, Mr. Abernathy stood there crying. Not just watery eyes, real, trembling, heart-deep tears. "Mr. Abernathy," I asked. "May I come in?" His voice shook. I need to talk to you." "Of course." He sat at our small kitchen table, staring at his hands. I waited, unsure what was coming. "The rose is going to live," he said finally. "You saved it. I've been growing roses for 40 years and I never would have believed it could be done, but you did it." "I know how much it meant to you," I said softly. "Do you?" He looked up, eyes wet. "Do you really understand?" I think it was your wife." He nodded, pulling out a worn photograph, a silver-haired woman smiling beside a rosebush. "Eleanor," he whispered. She was my wife for 46 years. She passed away 3 years ago. The garden was hers. I was just the helper trying to keep alive what she created. That garden is extraordinary, I said. You've honored her beautifully. He took a deep breath, trembling. Eleanor and I tried for 23 years to have a child. We never could. The doctors said it just wasn't meant to be. Cooper had crept closer, listening. I gestured for him to join us. The garden became our child, Abernathy continued. Every bloom was something we nurtured together. When she died, I became angry. Angry at life, at the empty house, at every laughing child that reminded me of what we'd lost. It was easier to be the grumpy old man who hated kids than to admit I was just broken. Cooper climbed down from his chair, walked up to him and said softly, "You don't really hate kids, do you?" "No, son," Abernathy whispered. "I don't hate kids at all. I'm just sad I never had any of my own." "I'm sorry I broke your wife's rose," Cooper said. "Your father fixed it," Abernathy replied, his voice breaking. "He probably saved it. I might have let it die, but he saw it could be healed." He turned to me. "That work you did, it wasn't just good, it was excellent. You've got real talent. You're wasting it doing small jobs because of what happened in Boston. These people here, they'd hire you in a second if they knew what you can do." I blinked, stunned. "Why would you do that for me?" "Because you respected what my wife built. Because you tried to make things right instead of just saying sorry. Because I've been alone for 3 years, watching kids play in yards, wishing I could be part of their laughter. Maybe it's time I stopped being angry about what I lost and started appreciating what I still have." Tears filled my own eyes. "Please call me Edwin," he said, smiling for the first time. "And I mean what I said about the recommendations. These people trust me. If I tell them to hire you, they will." I don't know what to say. "Say you'll let me help," Edwin said. "And say you'll let an old man teach your boy about roses. Eleanor always said, children and gardens go together. They both need patience, attention, and love to thrive." The next morning, Edwin started making phone calls. By the end of the week, I had 5 new clients, and for the first time in a long while, hope took root again. By the end of the month, I had signed contracts for 3 major landscaping projects. Each time, Edwin came with me, introducing me to clients, proudly showing them before and after photos of his own garden. "This is Matt Long," he'd say. "He understands that a garden isn't just decoration, it's a living thing. He'll make it beautiful and honor what's already there." His word carried weight. People here had known him for decades, they trusted him. And because of that trust, they began to trust me. The work was challenging, exactly what I'd once dreamed of doing. A shaded garden that needed restructuring. A formal rose garden that required expert pruning. A Victorian home that needed a complete redesign, balancing historic elegance with modern sustainability. I threw myself into it with an energy I hadn't felt in months. For the first time in a long time, I felt alive doing what I loved, knowing that an old man's faith had given me a second chance. But that wasn't the biggest transformation happening. The real miracle was taking place next door, between a 78-year-old widower and a 7-year-old boy who had broken his rosebush. Every weekend, Edwin taught Cooper about gardening. They'd kneel side by side in the dirt, one with a lifetime of experience, the other with a child's wonder. "Roses are like people," Edwin would say. "Each one is different. Some need a lot of attention, some prefer to be left alone. The trick is learning to listen to what they're telling you." Cooper listened to every word. He even started a garden journal, sketching plants, noting bloom times, and asking questions that revealed a deep curiosity. "Why do some flowers smell good and others do?" he asked one sunny afternoon. "Evolution," Edwin explained. "The ones that smell good are trying to attract pollinators, bees, butterflies, even birds. It's their way of saying, 'Come visit me, help me spread my pollen, and I'll give you nectar in return.'" "So flowers are basically making deals," Cooper grinned. Edwin laughed, a warm, rich laugh I'd never heard from him before. "Exactly, nature is full of deals, partnerships, teamwork. Nothing survives alone." From my kitchen window, I'd watch them, this unlikely pair, bound by broken stems and second chances, and feel a kind of gratitude I hadn't known in years. Edwin started joining us for dinner once a week, always bringing something from his garden: sun-warmed tomatoes, crisp lettuce, fragrant herbs. He'd tell stories about Alina, his late wife. She loved to cook, he said one evening as I fumbled with a recipe. She used to say growing food and preparing it are two parts of the same act of love. You grow it with care, cook it with attention, and share it with people who matter. Did you cook together? Cooper asked. All the time, Edwin smiled. Our meals followed the garden. Summer meant tomatoes and basil, fall was squash and roots, spring was peas and early lettuce. The garden set the menu and somehow that made life feel right. Cooper's eyes sparkled. We could do that too, Dad. I looked at our neglected lawn, then at Edwin. What do you think? Would you help us design a kitchen garden? His face lit up. I'd be honored. Within 3 months, I had enough steady work to quit the handyman jobs. Within 6 months, I'd launched my own small firm, Long Landscapes, and hired 2 part-time assistants. But the success that meant the most wasn't measured in money. It was watching my son and an old man build something beautiful together. That spring, we transformed our backyard. Edwin designed it. I executed his plans. And Cooper, my little apprentice, did most of the planting himself. We built raised beds for vegetables and herbs spiral near the kitchen door, and along the fence, a new row of roses. Among them was a special one, a lady of shallot rose carefully propagated from the very bush Cooper had broken. This one's yours, Edwin told him as they planted it together. You'll care for it, watch it grow, and someday when you have your own home you can take a cutting from it. That's how Alina's roses have lived on, by being shared and loved in new places. Cooper took the responsibility seriously, watering it daily, checking for pests, and reporting each new leaf with pride. And just like the rose, we all began to thrive. One evening in late June, almost a year after we'd moved in, Edwin invited us to dinner. But instead of leading us inside, he guided us through the garden to a small clearing near the back fence. 2 old Adirondack chairs faced each other across a small table. This, he said softly, is where Alina and I used to sit every evening. We'd have a glass of wine, talk about our day, plan the next season's blooms. He paused, his voice trembling. After she died, I couldn't come here, it hurt too much. I even thought about filling it in, erasing it completely. He'd added a 3rd chair that day, a smaller one painted a cheerful blue just for Cooper. But then Edwin smiled and said something that would change everything. I think it's time to start new traditions. What do you think, Cooper? Would you and your dad help me create a memory garden here? A place to remember those we've loved, but also to celebrate the people who are still here. Cooper looked up at me, eyes wide and hopeful. I nodded, my throat tight with emotion. We'd be honored, I said. And so we began. For the next month we worked side by side, planting, shaping, and building something truly beautiful. A circular garden with a stone pathway, flowers that bloomed from spring through fall. And in the very center, a bronze plaque Edwin had commissioned. It read, "For Alina, who taught us that gardens grow in the heart as well as the soil. And for the friends who helped us remember how to bloom." That night the 3 of us sat in our chairs, Edwin, Cooper, and me, watching the sun set over the garden. Edwin told stories about Alina, not sad ones, but joyful memories of a love that had lasted a lifetime. She would have loved you both, he said softly, his eyes warm. She always wanted children around, wanted to teach them about growing things. I think she found a way to do that anyway. Cooper asked, how? Edwin smiled, by making sure her garden survived. By showing that love doesn't end when someone dies, it just grows in new directions. 2 years later, that same garden became a symbol for the entire neighborhood. We stood there surrounded by friends, clients, and neighbors, celebrating 2 milestones. The official expansion of Long Landscapes into a full-service design firm. And a magazine feature titled, "The Broken Rose That Bloomed Again." The once broken rose bush, now called Cooper's Rose, stood tall, bursting with deep red flowers. Edwin explained to the guests. The break actually made it stronger, it grew fuller, more beautiful than before. That's what trauma does if someone helps you heal. Then he looked at me, eyes shining. Matt saved this rose, but more than that, he saved an old man who was broken too. The crowd fell silent, many wiping tears. Then Cooper, now 9 years old, stepped forward with a small card in his hand. He cleared his throat and began to read. Mr. Edwin taught me that when you break something, you have to try to fix it. And sometimes the fixed thing becomes even better because you learned how to care for it. Also, roses need water, but not too much. And you have to take care of gardens like families every day. Because broken things can heal if you give them time and love. The applause was thunderous. Edwin pulled Cooper into a hug, his eyes glistening. Later that evening, as the crowd faded, Edwin handed me an envelope. Inside was a large check and a handwritten letter. This is what I would have spent on landscaping over the past 2 years, he said. I want you to use it to grow your business, hire help, buy equipment, build your dream. I shook my head. Edwin, I can't. Matt, he interrupted softly, I'm 79, I have more money than I need and no children to leave it to. He smiled gently, except now I have a sort of grandson and a friend who's become like a son. Then he told me something that left me speechless. My will has been updated. When I'm gone, this house and garden will belong to you and Cooper. Just promise me one thing, keep the garden alive. I nodded, barely holding back tears. I promise, I said, and thank you for everything. That night, long after Cooper was asleep, I sat on the porch watching the stars above our blooming garden. Our kitchen beds were full, the roses were thriving, and for the first time in years my heart felt whole. My phone buzzed, a message from Stella in London. I looked at it for a moment and then set it aside. Whatever her path was, she had chosen it. Cooper and I had found ours right here. A broken rose bush had started it all, a child's mistake, a father's effort to make amends, and an old man's rediscovery of hope. Sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow from the most damaged soil. Sometimes the strongest families form in the most unexpected ways. And sometimes, when you think everything is broken beyond repair, all you need is someone who cares enough to help you bloom again. The rose Cooper broke now blooms brighter than ever. A reminder that broken things with love and care can become more beautiful than before. Just like families. Just like friendships. Just like life itself.